Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at the After Show Afterthoughts. I have Sylvia Jones, I have William Craig, and we have been talking about the Dr. Edith Rock Writing Workshop for Elders. And it's been established that it started in 2003. Ms. Sylvia has started it from the very beginning. Bill joined in 2010. We talked for an hour about how wonderful this process was and how it really started in the church, and now it is sponsored by the Black Literature Program in Medgar Evers College. But I want to continue about the responsibility of the writers, especially these particular writers who are then sharing their generational wealth of memory with us, and how the responsibility is for that. We talked about it on the radio, but a few of us could not get in. So I want to repeat some of that for especially our dear Jeffrey, who was not able to hear it. Ms. Sylvia, would you please talk about the responsibility for a minute of a writer and what you think about that, especially that of memoir?
Yeah, I'm thinking more in terms of the memoir and the history, and I think that it should be clear and concise. Within our workshop, we critique it, and then we try to make things clear so people will understand what we're writing. As far as time, as far as place, and things of that sort.
Bill, what about you? You talked about responsibility, especially in the wording of different things. You talked about, when we talked about the word riot and the effect that it had on you on Columbia University campus, the responsibility that you feel about the agendas of a writer.
I think it's critical that we be careful with what we read and also present to our children. It is a responsibility of the writer to bring forth truth, as far as I'm concerned. And if they are laden with an agenda which is otherwise than truth, trying to either achieve some level of power or control, then I think it is necessary that we as adults protect and guide those who are younger than us, who might be reading these things and believing them to be truth when in fact not. And that is sad but true happening right now, because everyone has an agenda as to.
Sometimes you're breaking in and out, and I think that has to do with you have that the earplug in and maybe directional. But I know what you're saying, that the agendas are very different, and it's important for us to make it clarification to the young people what it is. Do you find that both of you have a wealth of experiences behind you? Do you find that in this era, it's more difficult to get at accuracy than it was, say, 50, 60 years ago?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
You say to get at accuracy? How do you mean?
Yeah.
To receive accuracy, to the way that we are given news, the way that we are given things in story. How do you compare that to, say, 1963?
Unfortunately, I am distressful right now. What I'm hearing. Okay. I am very careful as to what I take in as truth. And if I want to find something, I then have to go past what is before me and get to some level, some granular level of what it is that they're trying to bring forward. If I don't particularly care, then I'll take that and use it and carry it. One of my colleagues pointed out to me that when this new thing came out called Snopes was doing different things and telling you about different things. And it turns out that some of those things are not really very, very true. And he pointed out to me, please don't send me anything that's not true. And he gave me the truth of the matter. So it is necessary to to determine what is being brought forward as.
I find that I'm far more careful about what it is that I believe when
Absolutely.
I hear things, or what it is that I believe when I read things. That I also usually try to go to several resources.
Exactly. And read,
Exactly. Exactly.
you read different ones from each publication, because everything is editorial, it, done editorially. People
Yes.
decide they're going to add their feelings and things instead of reporting the news as it is. And that's why I think it's critical that as memoir writers for writing history for our Black families, we want to try to do it as truthful as possible.
Yes.
As possible as our memories are, because I think it's vital this time, at this particular time, because I think our history are our roots. Just like the big oak trees, they don't have deep roots. They're huge trees and they grow and grow and then they topple over.
Yes.
But there's some trees that have roots that reach down, and then they can you can grow new plants from that. And I think that this is what our history is all about, because as we look at history right now, with Black people, we say still. Edith has said, I think when we were writing memoirs about the civil rights movement, and we were talking about still, with when I think we had the anniversary of the Pettus Bridge, when John Lewis got hit in the head and so
Yes.
forth.
Yes.
And
That
our
incident.
theme
Yes.
at our reading that time was still, because things are still happening. We talk about
Yes.
what we saw in 1963. We still had people who changed the real parts of history. Like when people thought about Black Panthers, they thought they were all evil people. They didn't know about the
Yes.
breakfast programs. They didn't know about all the programs
The breakfast programs. Yes. All of that is
programs that were currently going on.
Well, I think what it was that information was held back when they spoke about it. They never spoke about the entirety of what the Black Panther program and how it started. And it was started to feed children,
Exactly.
And because of that, because there was a disturbance about them feeding the children, they had to defend themselves because they wanted to end the program with them feeding the children, and they were not going to let that happen. That whole part of it kind of never got to the general public.
Exactly.
All you got was the aggression, the riot part of it, as you say.
Exactly, and how these people were out doing all these horrible things.
Yeah. It's when I think about when you brought something up, always I have questions in my mind, but I listened to you and you brought up people who changed. How do you compare, and how would you write differently the kinds of people who changed history, like and his name, Franz is around someplace, so he'll be able to tell me. The gentleman who changed history in Los Angeles, who was beaten by the police.
Rodney King.
Rodney King, yeah.
Rodney King.
Yeah,
Rodney
we remember.
King,
Hey, we're old enough to remember Rodney King.
How was that change compared to George Floyd's change? Compared further back to the change of the assassination of Martin Luther King? How do we? Is there a progression there? Are these changes having any impression on us as a nation, as a people? Have we become numb to the kind of violence that takes life? And how do we write about that?
I think we've become numb. I think we feel less helpless as we did back then. I think there was a feeling of being helpless, but I think now with some of the new technology, like with George Floyd, everybody saw it. Everybody saw it. So
there was less resistance to what actually happened, because before we had to go to hearsay, that this was actually filmed. We saw someone die in front of our eyes.
Yeah,
it was actually filmed in front of us.
But again,
whereas people died in front of other people's eyes, but it wasn't filmed. So the impact is different, you think?
I think so, and I think that you had more people taking pictures, not just the press, and so that was a big difference, I think.
Again, it's the agenda. Go, Bill.
what was extraordinary is that the other race of people, the Caucasians, finally saw that, and they themselves could not believe that that occurred, which produced an uproar to some extent in their community, as opposed to just us marching in the street and carrying this and carrying films. You saw a lot of young white people doing the same thing, acknowledging for the first time that there is brutality, there is racism, and it's killing people. In the past with Rodney King, yes, we had riots out there, and I was out there in LA at that time when they killed him. So the difference is that the shading in the people marching in the street had changed dramatically. Now, whether or not that produced any physical change, I don't think per se, because we're still seeing it. But what's happening is that there is a greater awareness that yes, being young, Black, and whatever is a risk factor, and which means that family, friends, and relations have to be careful of their young people, because they can be had just like anyone else. And
now there is a question. There is a question in the chat that I think that I'd like you all to give to you, and it's from Jeffrey, and it is an interesting reference that he applies here. It says, how much has the oral traditions in your families influenced your current writing practices?
With me, it has really impacted what I'm writing. I was looking at a piece. We used to write frameworks for our readings, and I wrote a piece called "Tales of Our Time" presents Trip Down Memory Lane. So many of the pieces that I put in here were from the oral narratives from my particular family. And just today, I was talking to a cousin, a third cousin, and we were talking about family history. And, you know, we could plug in here and there what Uncle so-and-so said and what Aunt so-and-so said and did. And remember, he used to say such and such. And so these are the kinds of things that I have incorporated within the writing to try to, you know, document these things. The narratives.
How strongly was the oral tradition in your family, Bill?
Not very strong at all, sad to say. There was an awareness, maybe a greater awareness, but it wasn't really addressed and brought forward whenever the family met per se. My family is what's left of us is shrinking, of course. Amazingly, I am a patriarch. I can't believe it at this point, but I am, and it's not really spoken of per se. Everyone seems to be about living their own life. I think they're aware, but no. I am blessed to have two children who I've helped make it an important factor to be aware of what's going on in their living. A son who has achieved, he's very much aware, and a daughter who has achieved and done extraordinarily well, and is a writer herself. She's produced 3 or 4 books herself. So that has been my blessing. The kids, the extended family, cousins and nephews, not so much. Not so
much. When we come back to you, Bill, I still say you're going to have to project a little bit more. Just a little bit more, because what you say is so valuable, but some of it gets a little lost.
Okay.
Sylvia, you were going to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think too, we think in terms of location. I came out of segregated Washington, D.C. It was a different kind of segregation in D.C. But we were segregated with a Black school system and a white school system. And I think that we, when we think in terms of history, and at my particular age, our parents weren't too far away from the end of the Emancipation Proclamation, and that there were certain things that were ingrained in us, education, working, home ownership, and going into business. Things
Entrepreneurship, yes.
Yeah, that's the word I wanted to use. Couldn't get it out right. But I was just thinking about that. And then when talking with my cousins this morning, all of the children are college graduates. And so this is one of the things that persist, in our family line, that education, the importance of education, because I think my mother's father learned to read and write. In fact, his grandmother, who had been a slave, had been what they call a house person, and she learned to read and write. And so my grandfather learned to read and write, and they came to Washington because he got a job working for the government printing office. But the whole idea of education and those things were vital. These are things nobody can take away from you.
I know in my generation, the art of storytelling was passed down to me by my grandmother, who lived to be 94, and her cousin, who lived to be 105.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yes. And I would just listen at their feet at all the stories that they would say with my father. It was my father's mother. And listen to the stories that she would recall with him when he was younger. And so I think that's why I'm a storyteller now.
That's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you, Jeffrey. That's a wonderful, wonderful question. Thank you so very much for that, Jeffrey. I'm not going to keep you all that much longer. I kept you an hour before. And, you all about like teenagers. I got to remember that I have to go to bed early.
Well, Bill is a teenager, and I'm as the old folks say, I'm up there. Can you see this? I guess you can't see this. This is a picture of Edith is in this picture. Can you see it, Lynnie?
No, if you bring it up to the camera a little bit more, and if you bring it up and let it stay, let it stay.
Okay, Edith is there, Ruby, and these are the people some of the first people in the group. And in fact, we did have a couple of men. We had Lada Cook was in that group, Mr. Mays, Dr. Cook. They were all in the Elder Writers Workshop.
At the very beginning. That's wonderful.
So we did have men in that group. So, with they all have chipped off this mortal coil. And now I think.
But they didn't have new age men like me.
Pardon?
They didn't have new age men like me. They had
exactly. You are our youngster.
I am the baby in the group. I am the baby in the group, believe it or not. And I'm close to 80 at this point. So, imagine that.
You are a baby. I remember when I was 80.
Okay. I have no dogs in this fight. I'm not saying a thing.
But this is the way we carry on all the time. So
no. But I do have to thank you both. And I am curious. I'm not going to ask you about it. I'm going to wait until next week. I cannot wait to find out what you all have decided to present and to read, and all the questions that we're going to have for you, because I think I've whet my appetite to wonder what memoir we will be hearing next week, and what picture you will be painting, because I would sit and listen to the various ones of you reading all the different cultures that would come out. And it was just like taking a trip around the world. And
Absolutely.
that was it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're welcome. Jeffrey says, thank you so much, Aunt Sil, Mr. Bill, and Lynnie for sharing the lovely conversation. We are going to continue this next week. I encourage for people to come early because I know that I'm going to hear from people who did not get on that board today and didn't have another source in which, because you can separately, besides calling in, you can go to blogtalkradio.com and you will hear it there also, you know. So I want to thank the two of you for the time. I promised it would only be about 10-15 minutes, and of course I've taken a little bit more time than that. But I'm going to post this up on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube this evening, and everyone will be able to see who they've been listening to for an hour. So I thank you for being a part of this week's, after show afterthoughts, and I can't wait until next week. So I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, but you all stay on for 1 second. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. And I can see you on the radio next week, and we'll see you here next week with Sylvia Jones and Bill. Bye-bye now.
Bye.